Hey everybody, welcome back to 10% True. Now this is a special intro for episode 3 of this series with Disco Dildy. If you watched episode 2, you will know that I explained how episode 2 basically grew out of all control and out of all proportion when we went to about 4.5 hours of content for episode 2, which didn't work, which is why I split 2 into 2 pieces, and therefore you end up with episode 2 and 3. This is episode 3, and therefore it's supposed to really be listened to right off the back of episode 2. And that's why episode 3 starts with us talking about getting back to the topic of 2v2 and Disco talking us through this F-15 HUD and weapon system video, the radar display video that I found on YouTube that dates from 1985. It's a really terrific piece of footage. It's the only footage I know of where there is a really good continuous, it's about 8 minutes or so of actual combat or simulated combat recording, which shows the radar in operation, shows the HUD without any censoring or any redaction whatsoever. It's sod's law, I suppose, that when I recorded this, I downloaded the video so I could play it without interruption. But of course, my video capture software has for some reason captured the video at a lower frame rate. It's probably like 15 frames a second or something like that, so it looks jerky. I would therefore recommend, and I'll put a link in the description so you can go to it, I would really recommend you go and watch the video before you listen to this episode, before you listen to Disco talk us through what's happening on the screen and what we're hearing in terms of the comm. If you do that, you'll get the best viewing experience of the actual footage, and then you can come back to this and you can watch in a more jerky fashion the footage unfold in front of us as Disco talks us through it. So that would be my recommendation. Or you can just say, no, I'm okay with it. I'll just watch it as it was and as it has been recorded. Anyway, please do like this video if you think it's good. Leave us a comment, subscribe, and help me grow the channel and reach a wider audience. Sit back and enjoy. Okay, so we've just talked about 2v2, or you just talked about 2v2, and we've then gone on these couple of little rabbit warrens talking about the Iraqis and high fast flyers and MiG-25s, which has been fascinating. But we're gonna bring the conversation back to the 2v2 topic, and Disco, you're going to talk us through this VSD and HUD tape that's from 1985, and I'll talk about that in just a second when I introduce it. But just for the audience at home, just so you know, Disco and I actually have a plan for where we're going to progress the conversation to. We'll come back in the next interview and we'll talk about 4v4 and we'll talk about 4v many, and Disco can talk about the things that he can or is interested in talking about in regards to that. We are going to talk about call signs. There are some other topics that I really wanted to talk to Disco about in terms of the sort of siloed nature of F-15, the F-15 community in the 80s and 90s, and the introduction of ammo and how that changed things. Intercepting trawlers, that's another topic of conversation. Eagle Eye is something we'll talk about too. So there's a bunch of different things. If you're listening to this and thinking, what about this, what about that, then those things are going to come up. And then our plan is for it to culminate then in Disco talking about his red flag experiences and Operation Northern Watch experiences, and then how he took those learning points and his experience as a campaign planner and as a colonel in the Air Force and applied that to his analysis of the Battle of Britain. And that's, for me, that would be a real treat to hear and to listen to. And I hope it's something that you'll look forward to as well. So that's what's coming up. That's what's to look forward to. But for the moment, then, we're going to share screens, and Disco's going to talk us through this 1985 tape. So the first thing just to say is that I've got this off of YouTube. It's from a channel called ex-AWACR. Presumably somebody who worked in AWACS. I'm trying to get formal permission to use it. I suspect it's actually DoD and therefore public domain because it's F-15 weapon system video. I don't think there are any copyright issues, but I do like to be asking permission to use these things. So I'm trying to get a hold of him to do that, and hopefully us playing it now and Disco talking you through it will be no problems. But it's from a 1985 flight of 2v2, 2 F-15s versus 2 F-4s. Disco will probably give you the background, and we will roll the tape in just a second. So, Disco, do you want to say anything about the HUD before I play it, or do you want me to play it until the VSD?
Well, just a reminder. I'm sure that your audience is well aware of what the F-15 HUD looks like. Airspeed in the left column, altitudes in the right column. Heading across the top, there's a pitch, what we call a pitch ladder, You see the horizon line is in that band of clouds, so it approximates the Earth's horizon, even though you can't see it, with 5 degree lines every 5 degrees above and below, 5, 10, 15, 20, etc. Lower left-hand corner contains some digital information. The most important number there is a very far lower left, and that's the G's that you're pulling. There's an M1, means it's got one practice training missile on board. The other thing is that if you're looking, you're looking through what we would call a soda straw or a toilet paper roller out the nose of the airplane, and so you can imagine yourself in a left bank starting a left turn in level flight, because the velocity vector, the little bitty circle with a tail and 2 little bitty wings, is on the horizon line. Above that is a W. That's what's called the water line of the airplane, which is where the nose is pointed. So you'll notice that the nose is not pointed at where the airplane is going, which is the velocity vector. And above that is a little X, and a little cross, and that's called the gun cross. If it's there, you're armed. If it's not there, you're armed safe. So we'll start off with that. It only matters because when we come back to the you'll hear the flight lead say go HUD, and because back then you had to flip a switch to go from make the camera go from VSD to HUD, so that you could capture the visual part of the engagement. Remember, I've talked about the phases of BVR versus BFM. When you're looking at the HUD part of the engagement, pay particular attention to the airspeeds on the left. The altitudes don't really matter until you hit the ground. That's because you got 0 altitude, but the airspeeds do. So when we go to HUD, or when they go to HUD, you'll see that the speeds are above 500. But you'll also see the fight progress to where the F-15 chasing the F-4 is down to 250 and struggling to get its nose to bear to make a gunshot on the F-4. Anyway, so the most important thing, as we've talked about before earlier, in energy management, is your airspeed. And so that's where it's presented. That's where the audience should look when the HUD display comes up.
Can I ask a quick question before I press play then? So I've always wanted to ask this, and I never have, and it's a very nerdy question, but the right tape for the altitude, if the tape comes down the screen, it descends, the numbers get bigger. So the left tape, if the tape comes down the screen, the numbers get smaller. So that sounds counterintuitive to me. I want 0 to start at the bottom in terms of airspeed, and then the tape travels down the screen as I get faster. So the
numbers, that right?
Yeah, but it works the other way in the Eagles. Does that seem normal then? That's like you never question that.
You want my unadulterated answer?
Go on.
I never noticed. So I don't know.
So yeah, when the tape travels down, you get slower. Tape travels up, you get faster. On the right hand side, tape travels down, you get higher. Tape travels up, you get lower.
Huh. Okay.
Okay. All right. Anyway,
no
one wants to listen to me.
Here I am, 23 years after my last flight in the Eagle, and I learned something new.
Or I got it wrong. We'll see. Okay.
No, I doubt it, Steve. You've observed many of these things. I'm just not smart enough to notice.
So press play.
Huh.
You ready to go?
Oh yeah. I'm sorry.
I'm still thinking about the tapes. Okay. All right. Here we go.
It's like riding in a car that does everything.
That's 6 Gs.
Yeah, here's some conversation between the pilot and the guy in the back. Okay.
Heading east. Shelman 18.5. And confirming the block.
Holes in the block.
Yeah, anytime now. Okay. So you'll notice that they started out in a left-hand turn in the HUD, but then when he switched to VSD, they were in a right-hand turn. A quick, very basic description of the display we were looking at. Although you can't tell it, this guy is in a 40-mile scope. The horizontal lines are every 10 miles. It's a B scope, meaning that the bottom of the display is not focused down to the nose of the F-15 like you would think it would be. And that's an A scope when it does that. But F-4s have A scopes. We have B, F-15s have B scopes. And they expanded out the bottom of the scope so that you could still get the angular displacement of a target if it was showing up on the scope when it was down in what we call the trough down at the bottom. So the vertical lines are degrees of azimuth. The center line obviously is right off the nose. 30 degrees to the left and right are the faint scribes, and the edge of the scope is 60 degrees to the right. You see the threes and the hash marks, the center one, and then the three at the bottom. Those represent 30 degrees. Look up, look down. And the little caret, the little chevron pointing, and you can see that in the lower left-hand corner, 6 high. Then is the radar sweeps 6 different times in that direction. Number 1 is high, and then kind of like a ladder down to what we call bar number 6. Then it'll go back up to bar number 1. And that gives the beam is about 1.5 degrees wide. So that gives you about a 10 degree, 6 bars gives you about a 10 degree wide radar look in that direction. You can see the carets just below that big hash mark means that the radar is looking slightly down. The two parallel vertical bars near the center of the scope, that is the target acquisition bracket known as the goalpost, using American football slang to describe it. And the 2 dots above that, of course, are the 2 targets. There's a gyro generated horizon there, so which really means nothing other than which way you're banking. And down below is the radar sweep left and right. And right now, I think he's in 120 degree sweep. No, looks like he's in 60 degree sweep, which narrows the field of view and keeps from wasting the radar energy looking off to the side where there's nobody there. So anyway, that's the search look. You can see that the targets, there are 2 targets. They're in line abreast, about 10 to 15 degrees off the nose to the left. But we have no idea what altitude they're at, which way they're headed, or any other information. It's just two radar returns. So
what mode, what radar mode would this be, Disco? Is this range well search?
He's in MRM. He's in medium range missile, and you can tell that because if we watch the words in the lower left, as each bar will be different. It'll be high, medium, high, and that's what we call interleaved, and that's for medium range missile acquisition.
And the quick question, and this looks very clean. The scope looks very clean in comparison to something that, there's lots of flight sims who watch this. They'll be playing, some pretty high fidelity F-15 simulations, and they'll be used to seeing things like ground moving target reject and chaff settings for that kind of thing.
Right.
How would you know what mode you're in other than by watching what the little indicator was doing? Was there any boxed option somewhere, or was it a rotary dial switch, a HOTAS?
No. There'll be a little circle for an SRM display, and it'll all be in medium PRF. And even like right now, there's no MRM medium range missiles ASC circle, an acquisition circle on the scope because you're not locked up. But the SRM circle will come up whether you're locked up or not, because that tells the pilot, if they happen to be such an idiot as to look at the VSD while engaging with a heat-seeking missile, that tells the pilot where the missile is looking. Yeah. So that's just all scopology. Nobody ever looks at it in SRM anyway, because again, you're looking outside at the target. But we just know that he's in MRM. from
So
that.
this predates MISIP, which you talked about in the first episode, and you talked about the changes and the way that really revolutionized the way you employed the airplane and the advances it brought in the radar capabilities. But so this is 1985 timescale. You weren't talking about range while search, track while scan, or anything like that. You were talking about MRM mode and short range missile mode. Those are the two things that you referred to then.
In this display, I think, Steve, that this is an A model Air National Guard airplane.
Okay.
Am I right?
I don't know. I don't. I thought it was a jet from Okinawa, but
because I flew A models in RTU and then C models at Bitburg, and even in MRM we would have more information on the screen than this.
Yeah.
So I think this is an A model limited by its smaller central computer as to what information it can display in the search modes.
Okay.
And that's just a guess. I don't know. I don't know where it came from or anything.
Yeah. But
that's why I think that's why the scope is so clean. It's very, very basic, which is good for talking about what we're seeing and not getting lost in all the detail.
Yeah. What?
Yeah, take us to a radar lock.
BSD. There they are on the radar. See him?
Yep, got him.
There he is.
About 25
Baltimore radar contact 2590.
Ah!
Sorry.
See the flashes?
Yeah.
When those radar hits flash, that is an immediate return. Notice now, and this is because of the geometry. Originally, we saw them in line abreast, right? Well, they were in a turn line abreast, but they were actually headed in either to the left or to the right, making them in line abreast. Now that they've completed another 90 degrees of turn, one has followed the other, and they're now in a lead trail formation.
Mm.
And he's lowered his radar acquisition symbol onto the lead target.
Okay, I was going to ask you, how did they switch so quickly from a line abreast to a lead trail?
Yeah,
but it's because they were in a turn. So, and with no vector sticks coming out of the track file, you don't know that. You would have to just observe.
Well, and there's no track file available because they have not locked on yet.
So you only get a track file from a lock on. Okay, all right.
That's true. It won't build a track file off of search returns. So yeah, when we saw them in line abreast, don't assume that they're headed our way or headed the other way. We don't know which way they're headed, but we know now because the F-15 was in that turn, right? It's in a right-hand turn to bring its nose around and put the targets on the nose, right? And rolled out. That now the horizon line is level, but before it was tilted in that turn. So the F4s, the F-15s completed their turn to point at the F4s before the F4s completed their turn to point at the F-15s. Hmm. So they're in a trail formation, but it looks like a line abreast because we assume that they're headed our way, but they weren't. They were headed either east or west, completing their turn to point at the F-15s, and when they did, they show up then as a lead trail formation.
Yeah, that makes sense. Wow. Okay.
Oh, there we go. We got a lock. So this is what's called the MRM circle. You can see we know the altitude is on the left. It's 18,000 some hundreds. Notice the closure rate over 1,000 knots. If it's over 1,000 knots, you're pointed at one another. Because each of us would be doing, as I mentioned earlier, each of us would be doing about 500 knots. So 500 plus 500, it's 1,000. So they're pointed generally in our direction. The circle that you see now is the launch envelope of the AIM-7. The dot in the middle of it is what's called the steering dot. And we'll see later a view of the dot out of the circle. But whatever you do with the airplane, your F-15, to pull off to one side, what we talked about F-pole earlier, when you're coming back to point at the target, you have to get the dot inside the circle because the dot is where the missile is going to go to hit the target. So if it has to pull lead to get the target. Then it's got to come off the airplane, and it's got to turn in the direction that the target is going, because it's going to intercept the target someplace out in front of the target's current position. So right now, this situation known as the dot is in the hole. The dot is in the middle of the circle. This guy could fire if he wanted to. Notice on the right, there's 3 hash marks. One is above the closure rate, and that's Rmax 1. The next one is Rmax 2. The bottom one is Rmin. Rmax 1 is just strictly the aerodynamic range of the missile. The next one, it takes into account some maneuvering by the target and the missile having enough energy to complete the intercept. And Rmin means that it won't have time to fuse before it gets to the target, so you're wasting ordnance.
And so, you're understanding the range by just seeing where it is against the sort of horizontal
right now
line.
Yes,
so it's like 18 miles or whatever that is.
Yeah, we know that this is a 40-mile scope. The middle line where the horizon line is 20. So yeah, the pilot has locked him up at about 17, 18 miles.
Yeah.
And in fact, I think what you'll see, he'll go to HUD shortly, and I think you'll see the range in the lower left-hand corner of the HUD when it occurs.
Yeah.
But it probably won't occur before 12 miles. But anyway, so yeah, we know the range strictly because we know it's a 40-mile scope, and he's inside half of that. He's closer to the bottom than he is to the top, the target.
Contact bandits.
Oh, showing them close.
Let's stop it now. This is the raid assessment mode. It is a obsolete mode. So it, we can talk about all we want because we haven't used it since 1985. And so what has happened is that by going into the raid assessment mode, and that's a flip of a switch on the throttle quadrant, then, or maybe it's on the stick, I can't remember. Then you'll see those 2 kind of diagonal lines. That is the extent of the radar's look. It's like it's taken a telescope and looked more closely at the target to see if there's more than one of them. And so so it's not looking outside. It's doing what we call a mini raster scan. What I described earlier with the 6 bars, alternating high, medium, that is a raster scan. This is a mini raster scan that's very tight. Again, trying to distinguish between the target that you locked up and if there's any wingman alongside it.
Do you know what the little circle is then? So you've got the dot, which presumably is the radar contact. Do you know what the circle is?
I do not recall what that is. I don't recall.
And would that have been at the time sensitive? RAM, the radar system mode, would that have been a sensitive capability?
What now?
Would it have been a sensitive capability at the time? Radar, at the
time, yeah. At the time, it was quickly overwhelmed by advancing technology, and it had the tactical deficit of getting guys to go craniums down into the scope, looking for all the targets out there instead of actually just employing the airplane, employing the missiles. It was known as the drool cup, which I think is a Monty Python invention, because the pilots would go head down into the BSD, and it's got this big rubber boot on it, so to speak, and you're looking into this cavernous boot and just drooling over getting a kill when actually you're sacrificing all of your SA for this one target. So it had a very short lifespan.
And one more question before I hit play then again. So
sure.
if there were another aeroplane very closely to it, in I guess what you would call a res cell formation, so the idea is you're so close together, the radar thinks there's only one contact, but there's 2. RAM will break them out as 2 contacts. Can you switch radar lock between the two then when it displays it to you in this format?
I think so, but I don't recall that.
Okay.
We'll see the second target show up, and now rather than be lead trail, you'll find that he's close aboard. He's relatively close aboard in an echelon. And you'll see a little triangle. If the triangle is pointing up, that means the second target is above the first target. If the triangle is pointing down, it means the second target is below altitude-wise the first target. But the circle, I don't recall that.
Okay.
20 miles, 19.
In trail, 1 mile.
Aha! You can stop it again. So,
All right, there we go.
so you see, there was a target there, what we call a hit, a radar hit, and it turned into a triangle with the point up, right? So there's a second target represented now by the triangle, and it is above the first target. Whatever the altitude on the left, what is that, 18,000 something?
I think it's got up to 19, yeah.
Yeah. Then the other target is above him. We don't know how much.
Okay.
And again, I don't know what the circle is. I wish I did.
It just went up, the circle went up the screen, so.
I saw that, yeah. And it might be the dot, but there was a dot earlier. I don't know.
Okay.
And of course, this thing's obsolete, not being used, so
Sure.
it doesn't matter. Okay. But now you see you got a two-ship formation. If we were pointed due south, it would be echelon to the left or echelon east. If we were pointed to the east, it would be echelon north. Echelon, the position you call out, east, west, north, south, or left, right, is in relation to the primary target, the leader.
That would it be helpful to have a heading scale somewhere in here to tell you which direction you're pointing so you can work that out? Or are you just expected to know which direction you're flying in so you can call it out?
At that stage, we were expected to know which way we were going. But I think later variations, not of this, of course, because it disappeared shortly after. It was gone from the inventory before I left Bitburg in '84, as far as frontline units. So yeah, I guess it would be good. What's really good, though, because it doesn't really matter what direction you're headed. What matters is the aspect angle of the target. In other words, which way is the target headed? Because if the target's headed right at you, then that's fine. That's optimum. But if the target's headed off to the left, off to the right, then you're going to have to pull over in that direction to get the dot within the hole again, within the circle, to get the aim 7 to be able to be in its lethal environment or lethal envelope. So it doesn't really matter what heading you're going. I just use those as examples as far as the example for the call out of the echelon to the left or the right. Echelon means that the wingman is not line abreast. He's somewhere aft of the leader, and the direction is to which side of the leader he is. So assuming that we are actually in the wingman's airplane right now. So the flight leader he's locked up because back then both did the same thing. In other words, if you had a rate assessment mode called RAM, then both of you would lock the primary target. So we can assume that the flight lead's got the echelon leader locked up. It's the duty now of the wingman to get his radar on the echelon wingman, the wingman that's in echelon. So that's why he needs to know where he's at. So both of these guys are targeting the same target group, but the target group is made of 2, and we're trying to sort again. Since we're in a wingman's airplane, he will try to sort the trailer or the left-hand guy, or in this case, the echelon that we see with represented by the triangle.
So we might see him switch targets then.
We might, and I think there was a way of doing that. I think you put the acquisition symbols over the triangle and tap it, and then it would jump. I think, but it's a really
long time ago.
We're talking 40 years ago, and this again is a defunct, obsolete, retired system. So I don't know.
Okay, all right.
With any validity.
Turning north.
Ram S.
Aha, he did. Look at that. He did. He
Go
just
back.
did.
Let's go
Yeah.
back.
He switched to the, oops.
Yeah, it's okay. I'll play it again.
Oh, showing them close. Copy.
Yeah, he switched.
19.
In trail 1 mile.
Okay.
Okay, there's the
So-
Ram.
Turning north.
That's exactly what he did. Stop it, please. Yeah, you can see that he put his acquisition symbols over that triangle with the point up, and that's why the whole display shifted.
Yeah.
Now he has targeted the adversary wingman, the left hand or trailing guy, the echelon left, and the leader of that F4 formation is now the guy with the triangle down.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And that's
I
why
mean, it was fast. It was really fast. I didn't even see it when I was doing my preview, but I saw it this time. Yeah, he put the acquisition symbols over there. He tapped it, and his radar jumped to the wingman.
Yeah.
Pretty cosmic, really,
yeah,
for
that's cool.
1985.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Do you
Now
know?
you can see too that those guys are getting close. They're getting, they're about 15 miles out, and they're closing again at 1,000 knots. So this is not going to take long before they'll either get behind or they'll get shots in the air.
And there's no there's no weapons engagement zone information here anymore. So you would have to come out of this to shoot.
That's exactly right.
Sparrow. Okay.
And that's why it's a raid assessment mode and not a raid engagement mode. and that's why that was this demise, was that people were getting locked into, mentally, they were getting into this in the drool cup, salivating over getting a kill, and they had no weapons information at all, and they should have had missiles in the air a long time ago.
Yeah. There was on here a little timer on the bottom. It's annoying. I can't get rid of this banner at the bottom of my screen. I don't know if I can. That doesn't seem to make any difference. It's at 42 seconds. Maybe. Yeah, here you go. It says 44 seconds at the bottom. Do you know what that relates to?
Yeah, that's time of flight of the missile.
Oh, okay. So they're about 10 miles here, 20 miles here. So it would be.
If you shoot right now, 47 or whatever it is seconds from now, one of those guys will blow up if nothing changes.
Yeah. Okay.
And of course, the missile works. Never a really good bet. I wouldn't be in Vegas betting on an AIM-7, that's for sure. Good way to lose a lot of money.
There's the Ram.
Turning north.
Ram echelon southeast.
Yep, Ram echelon southeast.
018.
Okay, now he's gone into single target track.
Showing an echelon east.
Yep, near echelon east.
Is he in a single?
Notice they're getting to the bottom of the scope.
Yeah, but he's not locked up anybody at the moment, is he?
No, he's not, because you cannot engage in RAM. So you'll notice that the lead target here is approaching 10 miles, right?
Yeah.
The bottom horizontal scribe is 10 miles. So he's approaching 10 miles. At 10 miles is where we need to be thinking about. We're either gonna shoot or run, one of the two. If we're going to shoot, we need to be taking our locks somewhere in this vicinity.
So am I being slow, or is this what's happening? So he's initially, sort of 10 seconds ago, he saw a radar contact. He's locked it up. He's gone into the radar assessment mode. The radar assessment mode has said there's actually two guys, one's higher than the other. He switched the lock. He's come out of radar assessment mode, but now he doesn't have a lock anymore.
And not only does he not have a lock, he only has a single target.
Yeah.
So now, when he goes back in and locks that target that his acquisition symbols are near or just below, he doesn't know if that's the leader of the trailer, or the echelon guy, or the wingman. He doesn't know. You have to sort it in single target track to get to the weapons engagement. And again, that's one of the flaws. It was just an assessment mode. It was one of those engineering, bright ideas that was great for providing information, but it wasn't any good on getting any kills.
Yeah. So you go in with more SA, but you wouldn't necessarily go in better targeted.
Oh, no, not at all. So, and really for our purposes in West Germany, defending against the Warsaw Pact, it was great for seeing the size of the package, the size of the formation of air to ground guys. If it was a squadron or a regiment of fencers coming through, they would make a ladder up your VSD. Why is that important? Because you want to find the last guy in their formation, in their train, and you want to start shooting them from the rear. You don't want to be rolling in and shooting somebody in the middle of the package and getting shot by somebody behind them. So that's the whole purpose of the rate assessment mode, is to find the back of the package. It's for use against raids. It's for use against air-to-ground formations, which are generally going to be some sort of what we call a train of 4 ships, followed by 4 ships, 3, 4, 5, 6, 4 ships going to the same target. Air-to-air use is, as you're watching, is of limited utility. In fact, where these 2 guys are getting down to 10, 12 miles, it becomes more of a handicap than a help.
Because they're now behind the time curve.
Well, yeah, he does. They're back to they know that this is an echelon formation that they're facing, but they only have one target. Which one is it?
Yeah.
They'll either both lock to the same, or the one will lock and the other will have to search for the other guy. And they wasted all this time when they probably had a single target track breakout, but not a single target track, a search breakout by now. At 12 miles, if there was more than, let's say, just a guess now, 1,000 feet between the 2 F4s, then they would break out as 2 separate targets.
Right.
And now you can take your lock based on the sort criteria that the flight lead briefed. I'll take my side, you take yours. I'll take the leader, you take the trailer. If it's echelon, you take the one on your side and we'll sort it out over the radio, just like I described earlier. Yeah. But see, they've denied themselves the ability to do that by staying in the rate assessment mode down to, as we see, 12 miles.
Yeah.
Now they have to start all over.
Yeah.
Of course, the leader has an advantage because what he can say is, I got mine, you find the other guy.
Okay.
Does that help?
Execute now. Bob, go on.
That was showing them in trail 1 mile for 13 miles, 210.
Okay, let's stop it. You heard the flight lead say to execute.
Yeah.
That's where they shoot and go into their FPO. Okay, so the flight lead took a Fox 1 on what he thinks the leader, and he went about 30 to 45 degrees in one direction to slow down the intercept. The other guy, you saw him bump the scope a couple of times, and it lowered the range, so he's not looking in the bottom of the scope. But in all that time, this target that is now on the scope, he's now on a 20-mile scope rather than a 40. So you can see that the target is right at 10 miles. He's calling that he's got the trailer at 10 miles, and based on the range that the flight lead said he shot his AIM-7, he's probably right. But without having both targets on the screen, we can't tell for sure. But he'll lock him up here shortly. Here we go.
Goddamn rate. 10 miles. Correct. Okay. 10 miles, 10 miles.
10 miles, 10 miles. Here we go.
Do you want the VSD or the HUD?
Can we back up just slightly to the VSD so we get a weapon system? Okay. So he's locked to he thinks he's locked to the trailer, right? The trailer is at what? He's inside 7.5 miles, because now he's up. The scope will automatically switch to whatever range is optimum for the intercept. So he was previously in a 20-mile scope, and it jumped immediately to a 10-mile scope because the closure is so fast, the target is now inside 10 miles. You can see he's about 7 miles out, right? Notice that they're pointed. Notice that the F-15 is pointed at the target. Target's on the centerline scribe. The dot's in the middle of the circle, and it's on the centerline scribe. There's no reason to not start putting AIM-7s in the air. So while the flight lead did what we call a crank, probably, I'm guessing now, and pulled off when he called the word execute, he probably pulled off 30 to 40 degrees to one side or the other. The wingman, his head is straight, nose to nose. It's what we call down the snot locker with the adversary.
One thing we haven't heard is any kind of ID, no IFF.
It was on there. AWACS called Bandit back at around 25 miles.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Yeah, it's like most Eagle drivers, this guy's got his volume turned down for the AWACS. Because who wants to listen to those clowns anyway? Just point me in the direction of the enemy.
Well,
I'll take it from here.
He's got one in his back seat by the sounds of it. This is an incentive ride, isn't it?
He's got what we call a breather. He's got a breather in the back.
Okay, go
Fox 1 on the leader.
Go ahead.
Tally. Tally 1 on my nose for spike.
Aha, okay. I don't know if you noticed the black mark in the upper left-hand corner.
Yeah.
Just a moment ago. That is called the.
No, let me get it.
It's called the witness mark. That is when the AIM-7 button is pushed, or the fire button is pushed. He's just sent the fire signal to the AIM-7. This is the MRM display for the HUD. Notice that the dot is right on the edge of the circle. Mm-hmm. Now, if you back it up to where the witness mark shows up, we'll see if it's a valid shot.
Okay,
the F4 is moving to the right.
Let's play it. I'll see if I can pause it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Tally 1 on my nose for spike.
Yep, right there. Okay. Yeah, the dot is barely in the circle. See that?
Hmm.
That means that the AIM-7, when it comes off the airplane, is going to take a hard right turn to get out ahead of the target. Because if he had waited any longer, then this would not be a valid shot because the dot would not be in the hole. Dot would not be in the circle.
Okay.
You can see that he's about 6 miles. My resolution's not really.
No, mine's not. If I hit play and pause again.
But it doesn't matter. He's about 5 or 6 miles. At that space, certainly I would follow it up with a second missile. I wouldn't even wait to see where the first one's going because it's so close to the edge. You need to double the chances of a kill.
Yeah.
So yeah, hard right turn to intercept the target.
West.
And now you'll notice that there's no fire signal underneath the TD box. He no longer has a shot. Missile will never get there. There it is. Okay, break X. He's inside min range. And now we'll see him pull up.
On the high F4. There he is, right side.
And now he's at the top of the egg, pulling back down. Notice the airspeeds.
So he's quite fast. So 450. So you were saying 420 and 385 were your numbers.
That's right.
Okay.
So they entered the fight. They entered the merge, the visual engagement with tons of smash. Right. He's got to get rid of it. Even to outmaneuver an F4, he's got to slow down to his own cornering velocity, which we already talked about around 385. So he pitched up, poof, very high into the vertical. You saw that, and now he's rolled over, and he's brought the nose back down. What is that? 15 degrees nose low, I think.
Yeah, it's 15.
And he's actually rolling the lift vector now to where he's in about a 90-degree bank, and he's putting the lift vector way out in front of the F4 so that he can bring the nose under the F4 and then pull it up a little bit to line it up to get what we call in plane for a gunshot.
Yeah.
Coming up for you, straight up. Okay, Tally. Pass my guy beak to beak.
Okay, the lead passes this guy beak to beak. and this guy was not able to solve what we call the angles problem. So he's brought the nose up, and now he's just following him around the circle, waiting for the F-4 to run out of airspeed. What I'm looking at, like what, 440 on the left?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So plenty of smash, lots of energy, and it's now just a matter of using that energy to your advantage. Don't give it away. There's right now, if he pulled the stick to his belt buckle, he'd OG the airplane. Mm-hmm. So he's got to get rid of the knots to tighten the turn. Right now, his turn radius, because the airplane's so big and going so fast, will be about the same as an F-4. So he's got no real maneuvering advantage right now.
And so you've just said, you heard the flight lead say, I went beat to beat with mine. I wouldn't have been able to sort of broken that out from the comm. But is this now 2 1v1s occurring? Would you expect this guy here to have any idea where his flight lead is and where his flight lead's target is, the bandit his flight lead is engaging is? How much will this guy know about what else is going on?
It depends upon whether he's maintained visual contact with his flight lead. Remember, the flight lead did an execute. He called execute, meaning that he was going to enter his F-pole maneuver to the right. He's on the right. We know that. But the wingman stayed nose on to the target. The target started turning probably towards the flight lead. He started turning from on the nose to the right, because we saw that with the AIM-7 employment, that the dot was in the far right edge of the circle, right? That means that the F-4 is going to the right. So now he pulled up and he rolled over, and now he pulled through a 90-degree turn, and now he's got the nose back on the horizon. He's in a right-hand level turn. If he saw his flight lead pass beak to beak with his own target, now he may see his flight lead pass beak to beak with his target, if that makes sense. So he may have, good situation awareness, especially with the comm being very good. But we don't know. We don't know if he actually sees the second bandit or not.
Would that be a standard call to make, though, if you do see the second bandit? Would it be?
Well, his bandit is the second bandit. We know he sees his bandit. I misspoke there. Whether he sees his flight lead, he should have called, lost sight or something. If he lost sight of his flight lead. So I presume, since there's been no call to that effect, that he still sees his flight lead. So the situation is that the flight lead just passed 180 out with one F-4. The other F-4 is coming to him, and our guy, we're riding in the airplane that's now chasing the second F-4 around the circle. Okay. So he probably does have good SA based on that being the spatial relationship of the 4 airplanes. Assuming he sees 2 out of the 3. He won't see the first F-4 because that guy's somewhere behind him.
Yeah. That's the guy.
He should see the other fish. Yeah.
Okay.
Tally ho.
Continue. 3. 2 1v1.
Yep. See. So the flight lead said tally ho. Continue. Free. In other words, free fighting. Neither one of us have to support the other. 2 1v1s. So the flight lead has sorted the engagement out into 2 1v1s, and he wouldn't do that unless both F-15s are in a position of advantage against their adversary, their individual adversary.
And now on the display, then, so this is a bigger circle before. This has gone to M0 from M1 to M0. Is that a different Sparrow that's been selected? Is this flood mode or something? What's going on?
No, I think this is the super search mode. The big circle is super search. So because he doesn't have either one of the F-4s, they're what we call aft of the canopy bow. To see the F-4s, the targets, he can't look out the windscreen because they're not there. He's looking out the side, right? But so we thumb forward on the stick, to put the radar in a super search mode, and it is searching in that raster scan, the mini raster scan, within that circle. Now all he has to do to get a radar lock is visually pull the nose around to where the F4 goes into that circle, and the radar will snag it, will lock it up, and then go into SRM. And now, if you're behind the 3.9 line, you should be able to get an AIM-9 off at this guy, if you can get him into that circle. So it goes from BFM, and that's what? I think that's a 20-degree circle. In other words, 10 degrees. Yeah, 10 degrees in all directions. So if you can get the adversary within 10 degrees of the nose, you can get a radar lock. If you can get him, pull him a little closer to either the gun sight or the SRM circle. Of course, the missile is slave to the radar anyway, but you have to give it some margin for maneuverability. But anyway, my point is that the first order of business is to get him in the SRMs or in the super search circle. Second is to fine tune it down to an actual kill.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
For the other guy, you can have
Yeah, see, look at that. He got him.
I'm
The radar snagged him, and he just shot.
I mean,
And now he's going. Okay, the first witness mark. You hear the beep.
Yeah.
That's the tone that goes with the witness mark. So the super search radar lock or radar scans snagged him, and immediately he was already in MRM. And immediately, as soon as it settled, you have to give it about a second and a half to settle down in terms of providing the, back then it was analog information. You got to allow it to squirt the analog information into the AIM-7 so it knows where to go, right? And so you give it a second and a half, and then push the fire button and beep, and the missile's off to the races. And now, as soon as it leaves the airplane, and you hear this thunk as the big foot out there kicks the missile overboard, and the lanyard gets pulled and the rocket motor fires off and it goes chugging out towards the target. And as soon as that happens, as soon as you hear the kathunk, then you on the right hand side in your right hand on the throttle, you rotate the weapons select switch back to the center position, which is SRM. And that's when the circle went from big with a dot. Now it's just smaller. And that is basically the field of view of your AIM-9. Basically, I'm generalizing now. Notice that there's a TD box around the target, and that's the radar. Then there's a little triangle underneath. That's you're in the envelope. It has to do with angles as well as range. And then there's a little circle that's outside the box. It started in the box, but then when you hit the SRM button on the throttle, this is known as playing the piccolo. Both of your hands are working, all fingers are working, and so select SRM. You hear that just briefly. He hit the uncaged button, and now he's making sure that circle is around the exhaust, the hot exhaust of the adversary airplane. If it wanders off, then and the missile didn't lock on, so to speak, didn't follow the heat source, then of course you're wasting the AIM-9. So you'd recage it and do it again. But in this case, the SRM circle is around the heat source because it's so close to the radar return of the airplane. And so he's going to shoot the AIM-9 as well. So he's going to follow up an AIM-7 with an AIM-9. And that will practically guarantee a kill.
And it says, I think, uncaged in the bottom right-hand side. So range is 2.2 or something like that. It says in range, yep. And then uncaged.
Exactly. And that's not something to pilot. Okay, see, there was a witness mark. He just launched it. Notice that the little triangle indicated in range, in parameters went away. Because now the airplane's missile or weapons computer is cycling to the next AIM-9 in precedence, if you will.
Yeah. Let me go back a couple of seconds and we'll just play that again.
Yeah.
Two 1v1s. To the other guy.
Two 1v1s.
Copy. I'm going straight in.
Identity 4.
Box 1.
Box 1.
Lima.
Box 2.
Okay, here we go.
There he goes. The F-4 is going into a last-ditch dive maneuver. And the F-15 pilot has gone to guns. Now we have a gun reticle.
Okay. Yeah, television all players.
Notice the airspeed. Airspeed's dwindling rapidly.
Okay, if you can take him, I'm going to crank this guy. Copy, I'm on track mine.
He said, if you can take him, I'm going to crank this guy.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what's going on with lead, but it doesn't sound like his fight's going as favorable as this one. I don't know. The use of the word crank, I'm not sure what that means. He didn't say switch. I think what he was trying to get the wingman to do is basically kill him as fast as he can. I don't know.
Yeah.
You can back it up for a quick, a quick run through again just to see.
Before I do that, there's a jam indication in the HUD. What does that? I mean, it's obvious what it indicates, but what does it mean for you? Does it mean you can't trust the radar? Does it mean the radar's not going to pick him up if you put him into an auto guns or that super search mode again? What are the implications of it?
No, it's depends. Well, as everything, it depends. I think what it's trying to tell the pilot is you can't trust the range information, since I think you only get the jam indication if there's something. There's something that the radar is receiving, because this is a radar receiver, of course, because it transmits and it receives, right? Well, it also receives jamming, of course. So if it's receiving jamming, then it may be lying to the pilot in terms of that range information. Look at the range on the reticle of the gun sight. How do you read that?
Yeah, 0.
Yeah. So, but they're not at 0. They're at least 1,000 feet away.
Yeah.
So the radar is recognizing that I'm getting some, and it could be just side lobe information or side lobe noise. But anyway, so it's basically saying don't trust the display because I'm getting jammed.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with the acquisition. It has everything to do with the information displayed after the acquisition.
Yeah. So let's go back and just play that sequence again then. So
yeah, this is fun to watch.
Okay.
Okay, now
here we go.
And there's the gun sight. 7,000 feet, 6,000 feet.
Okay. Yeah, television all players.
Okay, tally visual all players.
Okay, if you can take him, I'm going to crank this guy. Copy, I'm on track mine. Okay, come on. Here we come.
Okay, Steve. Yeah. Okay. I didn't notice when the jam signal came up, but I did see that the TD box left the target. It went off to the left, meaning that the radar had transitioned to something way far away, or at least not aligned with the F-4. And that's when the range information went to 0. So the radar is not tracking this target. Okay. Which means that the gun sight, the computation it's giving for computing lead and all the other parameters is totally bogus. So that's why that jam cue was there. Don't trust this gun sight because the information is bogus because I'm getting a jam indication. That's why he broke the lock on the radar. And you'll notice there's no range bar at all on this radar, on this gun sight. This is the no lock gun sight, and this is I I think set at 2,000 to 2,500 feet away. So it's just a gyro stabilized gun sight with no information, because he has broken the lock, realizing that when the range got down to 0, but yet the F4 was still, 3,000 to 6,000 feet away, is bogus. So it means you don't put the pipper of a bad gun sight on a target, because that's a sure way to miss, because the bullets aren't going where the pipper is. Now he's made sure that it's no lock, and he's just taking a guess at the range. He's probably going to stiffen it to make it go to 1,000-foot setting to be sure of the gunshot. But this is a no lock gunshot now, from having been locked up with a bad lock with a jam at Q.
And stiffening is a HOTAS function, isn't it? It's on the throttle gun sight stiffen. It
is. It's a ring finger button. Again, playing the piccolo. There's a button for every finger.
Guns on F-15.
Okay. I think he called the shot, but that wasn't valid. But anyway.
It sounded like he said guns on the F-15.
Which would mean that the other F4 got him while he was chasing this guy, which means his flight lead failed.
It sounds like that, doesn't it?
It did, didn't it? Yeah, it did.
Guns on F-15.
Yep, you're right. You're absolutely right. So the flight lead called what did he say? He said, I have all players in sight.
Yeah.
Right? 2 1v1s, I got all players in sight. So he told his wingman to go after your guy. I'm going after mine. But he failed to get his guy. And the F4 called a gun skill on him, on our guy, the guy we're flying with, because this guy is so focused on into that gun sight in the F4. That's all you're thinking about. All you're thinking about is putting that pipper on the backbone of the target airplane and pulling the trigger. And you're not looking. You're not checking 6. So yeah. So this is a less than completely satisfactory engagement.
Watch your altitude holes.
What's the airspeed now?
2 something.
Yeah. Well below 350.
290 is what he's got now.
Yeah. Well below 350. He got himself slow.
Okay, you're gonna blow his shit away. Okay, he's coming back in on you. Ready. Copy, knock it off. 1, knock it off. 2, knock it off. See him in the right side? And all's 1, let's vector 060. Copy, 060. 8 top. Obviously.
Okay,
so
this is the next engagement.
That was an Olds 1 call sign. Olds? Would that be into Robin Olds, or is that a?
It could be Olds. I thought it was Rolls, but maybe Olds.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
I'll bet you're right. I bet it was It was Olds call sign. And I do not know who that would be.
Okay. Okay. So this is the second engagement then. So they've referenced 060. So they're going to go reset. Are they? Is that what they're doing? The F4s are going to go back to their wherever it is, and
just like 2 boxers, the 2 formations are going to their corners of the ring. And one's in this southeast, the other's in the northwest, and these guys right now they're in a right-hand turn, level turn, to point at one another. Yeah. But anyway, anything else on that engagement, Steve?
No, I don't think so. I think, the one thing that was kind of noteworthy was that no one actually called a kill. So they called guns on the F-15, but they carried on shooting at each other anyway, right? Because the guy who had just been gunned said, right, I'm going to blow this guy away. He obviously was frustrated, but there was no sort of kill terminate type thing. It was just keep flying until
keep shooting, flying, keep shooting.
Yeah,
which tells me there's probably the Air National Guard.
Okay, second engagement. Let me see if I can get this frickin' thing sorted. Doing my head in. It doesn't really matter. I might not even be on the screen, but nah, it's not going to play ball. Doesn't matter. All right, second engagement.
We'll see a lot of what we saw before.
Takes on BSD. Yeah. That works. No problem.
So are these? Sorry, I paused it. Are these real targets or are they birds? You guys call them birds, don't you? Where it's
Yeah,
a
we
false
call them
target?
birds. Yeah.
How
You
would
notice
you
the
know?
ones that, because a real target will flash bright.
Okay.
You know, if you want to run it back about 5-6 seconds, you'll see that as these show up, only one of them flashes bright.
Okay.
Takes on BSD. Yeah. That works. No problem.
See, it's the middle of those three.
Yeah.
That's the bright one. And sure enough, that's the one.
Bandits 220 for 30. Contact bandits.
220 for 30. Contact bandits. So AWACS is already cleared under fire.
Bandits in the right-hand turn north.
So they're in the rate assessment mode at 25 miles. Single target search.
Let's contact bandits. Show bandits echelon west.
Patrols, be a side sword, low bracket. Heavy.
And all
So he
Okay.
said
Side
sort.
sword bracket.
Okay.
What?
He said side to side sort. Did he say a low level bracket?
I think he said to a bracket, but
Okay.
basically the call, which is, I'm not, you know, I wouldn't judge it yet, but a bracket means we're going to split and see which one of us they come after, and then the other's going to have an entry. Right? So that's why I call bracket. Now that standard F-15 tactic against a formation that is, you know, is going to stay together as a single entity. The problem is that you don't ever really know if they're going to do that.
confirming your box.
So you see the echelon to the right.
Tape bracket.
We show a lot of.
Okay, now he's turning to the right for his bracket, his side of the bracket.
And did he just
And
lose
he lost
the
the
lock?
lock.
Yeah.
He lost the lock. He probably turned so aggressively the radar couldn't keep up with the maneuvering, and it dropped the lock.
Okay.
Just a guess.
Oh, execute.
There he is again.
And also, we got a non-player 265 for 15. He's low at 6,000.
Okay, let's stop it. Okay, I don't know if you noticed, but once our guy pulled off to the side, executing his arm of the bracket, what was an echelon, looking from the side, becomes a lead trail. So all of these formations and the designation of them is really dependent upon what we call VSD apparent, whatever it looks like on the VSD. So again, they started off as an echelon. They did a bracket. Our guy executed the right side of the bracket. You can see now he's in a left turn to put the F4's his target on the nose. The dots in the at the top of the circle, meaning that this AIM-7, when it comes off the rail, is going to have to go up a lot of altitude to engage. You can see that the target already look at it. It's right at 10 miles. All of that happened from the initial setup of 30 miles to now in what? 45 seconds, 30 seconds to a minute. These things happen really fast. Look at the closure. 1,100 knots. Things are happening real fast. You cannot afford to get mentally behind at this stage. So he's pulled to the left and up to get the AIM-7 steering dot in the circle so that he can unleash an AIM-7 at around 10 miles. There you go. There's one shot.
Copy, got mine beaming west.
Let's stop it. So So he just called basically my target's beaming west. So the two F4s have split. And the trailer, which is the wingman's responsibility that he just locked up and shot an AIM-7 at, went into the beam, headed and is headed west. Our guy, I can't read the heading at the top of the screen,
like 05.
but it must be something towards the south. The notice that our guy is in a hard right-hand turn, and the steering dot is up and it's up and to the right. If you see the circles around the W, right? It's around the water line of the airplane, meaning that the AIM-7 is going to have to pull to the right. It's going to have to go up to pull enough lead to engage this target if he shoots again. The range, I think, is reading around 5 miles. Is that right?
4.9, yeah.
Yeah, 4.9. So he's got a 5-mile AIM-7 shot in the beam, but the good news is look up, meaning that the radar is not confused by ground clutter. This AIM-7 has a free ride to the target if it functions properly. So he already shot one. Now he's shooting, and he should shoot a second one because of the target maneuvering.
Yeah.
I want on the high. Probably wanted 11,000. Okay, my guy's 17. Banana, Lima.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, second Fox 1 on the high guy. Gauging mine, right side high. Roger. Okay. Okay, the other guy is coming to your site. At your 6, break down and left. Got him.
On F-15, right-hand turn.
It was another shot, wasn't it?
Yeah, not real good. Not real good. Okay. Well, that's training for you.
For chasing the F-15. He's no factor to you now.
Yeah, no kidding. You're both dead.
And you're on the guy out ahead of you.
Okay, going in and cut his fucking brains out.
At least he's got a good gunshot coming up, I gotta say.
300 knots.
Notice the airspeed. The airspeed's bleeding fast.
Okay, we're all in a tight furball, but you continue.
Yep.
Got it.
300
And
knots.
this goes into my comments about how you can tell how the airplane is talking to you. The airspeed is dwindling.
Tally visual, everyone. Roger. Going low on you. I'm going high. That's a gun strike kill on the F4 right turn. Okay.
Yeah, that was valid. That was valid.
I'm going into gun to slow guy.
And oh my goodness, they're bingo fuel.
Reset. The fight's right by the front. Cleared. Kill up 4 low. Oh, knock it off. What? I did knock it off. Drag that copy, knock it off.
Yeah. You'll notice that these are definitely guard guys. You notice they did not call knock it off when one of them was bingo. They waited till they got their gun tracking kill before they knocked it off. Got to go home with some tape. Got to go home with some movies of the F4s.
A question for you then that relates to something you told me years ago and something you mentioned in part 1. So in part 1, I'd said to you, was there anything that you had sort of struggled with? And you had said that over time you found, compared to being a young Eagle guy versus vice wing or even the squadron commander at Schusterberg, you weren't as aggressive in your later years. You said maybe I wasn't as aggressive. That's what you said in the last one.
Yes.
And I remember you told me the story, and it sort of has stuck with me since then. I don't know when you told me. It must have been sort of 10, 15 years ago about you. I don't know if it was at Schusterberg, but you said you landed after a BFM sortie, and one of the guys in the flight came up to you, and you said he was ashen. He had, the colour had drained from his face. And he said to you, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. And he had scared himself, or maybe he had scared himself for the 100th time or whatever. And I think you said he ended up going to E3s. He had a happy end to his career, in the AWACS. But I wanted to ask you about that then. There's a training bubble, which is the idea is you don't get too close to each other. It's, 1,000 feet, something like that. How does aggression how do you temper aggression with, not hitting the other guy? How did you scare yourself? How do you deal with the psychology and maybe the emotions that hit you afterwards? Can you describe what that arena is really like?
I think each of us as individuals have our own threshold of when we get scared, and when we are completely oblivious to the risk we just took and escape with our lives. The things that are scary about air-to-air fighting are the close passes. So some of those are observed; they're intentional. Some of them, though, are completely what you can call blindsided, where another airplane enters the fight. Your essay did not include that airplane in your calibrations, and you get suddenly surprised, and maybe even the passing of the jet wash slams your airplane. Like, holy shit, that was close. And I've had some of those, and usually we would sort them out in the debrief. How did that happen? The 1,000-foot bubble, for safety reasons, is violated in like 1.2 seconds if you're opposing each other. So it's really, it doesn't really exist as a helpful aid. I mean, on face-to-face combat, in other words, in the front quarter, the place where it's very good is getting a person, and now we're going to the subject of tempering the aggressiveness with the safety factor. So if you're going in for a gunshot on a maneuvering adversary, and I just got to solve this last little angle. I got to put the tipper right there, and so you go inside the 1,000-foot bubble, and you can scare yourself by having what we call fangs out. Your fangs are through the floor. You're so tunnel vision focused, like you're looking through a sniper scope or a long range scope to shoot some game or a bear or something. Everything else is just gone. That's all that you're focusing on, and then you have absolutely no perception of depths and distance, because inside 1,000 feet, the target will balloon, if you will. It'll swell up so rapidly, it'll shock you first before your mind recognizes that I'm going to hit this guy.
Wow.
So that's why the 1,000-foot ball is there, is to help you learn to temper your aggressiveness in trying to get this gun, track, and kill without endangering yourself or the person that you're fighting. So and that too, like everything else we're talking about, is a learned trait, if you will. It's something that you learn with exposure. I've seen gun camera video. The young guys, they're always taking shots, 2,000, 2,500 feet, and the target's just a little bitty. It's about the size of a pipper. The pipper itself are a little bigger, a little larger. As you get more and more confident that I can drive in there, you don't want to drive in there and sweeten the shot, but you want to make sure you get the kill. So there's a trade-off there. And you have to recognize where's 1,000 feet and when do I have to come off. Unless you build that into your whole computations as a warning flag, then people will violate it regularly. So anyway, I'm not sure I answered your question, Riley. But that is where the aggressiveness will bite you. Is usually the near misses, the close passes, are as a result of lost SA, not aggressiveness. In my opinion, I mean, now we're talking aggregates. We're talking percentage of what was the cause. I've lost friends in mid-airs before, and sometimes you shake your head, like, how did that happen? Usually it happens with one of the two parties losing sight and hitting the other, losing sight of the other, not because they're so aggressive that they drove in too close, or approached too close from the forward aspect.
Let's talk about that. I mean, that's the sort of serious part of this conversation, I suppose, isn't it? When we wrote our Eagle book together, you dedicated it to two of your friends who had been killed at Bitburg, I think, and you knew Mark Postar. Mark Postar was your best friend and best man at your wedding with Annie, and he was killed flying a MiG-23 out at Tonopah. And you've just referenced some friends who were killed in mid-airs. How do you handle the threat of death? I don't mean in combat. I mean, you just take off one day for training sort of, and you don't come back again. And what do what did you tell Annie about that and your children? How do you manage the expectations of the people that are behind you? You talked about your family in the last episode and the importance of hitting your career objectives, because that was their payback for all the things they did for you to support you. So I know they're important to you, but what's the fighter pilot position on it, and what's the father and dad and husband position on it?
Well, the first thing is the realization that on any given day, it could happen to me. And not that that's something that's you dwell on by any means, because that would be bad. But on any given day, there's just so many variables out there that, and many of them, the only one that you really have any control over is the stick and the throttles that are in your own hands. So, and of course, the knowledge that you have in your head about what you're doing and how to do that without endangering yourself. But it's very, very foolish, of course, to think it'll never happen to me. Anyone who's, I've got 1,200 hours in the F-15. Anyone who's flown that much in air combat training, you have close calls, and but for a split second, it could have been a fireball with two lives lost, but it wasn't. So as far as preparing Annie for that, if that eventuality occurred, I can't say that I was very good at it. I don't think any of us are. There's no way. She knew Mark like I did. We'd gone to. He was at our wedding. We were at his wedding with Linda. And we'd gone, double days together in Vegas and at other places. So it's she knew, especially after he'd gotten killed, she knew that it could happen. It could happen to me. The other aspect of that is that for me personally was that we had lost one pilot, one instructor pilot during my 4 years at BAS as a T-38 IP. And I think I talked in the previous segment, there was a final turn accident. Student got slow in the T-38, put it to the point where there wasn't enough thrust coming out of those engines to keep the airplane from hitting the ground. Well, within 3 or 4 months of my arrival at Bitburg, we lost an F-15, and the guy got killed. Low altitude intercept, G-LOC, loss of consciousness, and hit the ground somewhere up in North German plane, in a low-fly area, doing a swirl with I don't know, German F-4Fs or Phantom FGR-2s, Wildenrath or somebody. No, and then we lost another guy in a G-LOC. I even had a G-LOC incident myself, and woke up because as everything closed in on me, I realized what was happening, and there was a low altitude, a slicing turn intercept against, I think, some F4s from Spain Olive or something. In my flight lead, I was behind. My flight lead had the radar contact. I didn't. He picked up the visual. I saw the belly of his airplane, and then the target was underneath him. So I rolled, put the lift vector out fire, and pulled my 7 to 9 Gs, and with the nose slightly down, and I could see the greyness swooping in from all the sides, and I knew that if I didn't do something, this was going to result in ground impact shortly. So my vision had gone black. I just flicked the stick to the right to roll the airplane out, and added just a little back pressure as an insurance policy to get my nose above the horizon. And I woke up with my flight lead calling me on the radio, and I was passing through 12,000 feet in a climb.
Wow.
And I can remember waking up. I was looking down at the console. I can remember recognizing the INS. And I think that was on the right side. But anyway, so I thought to myself, well, when did they put an INS in a T-38? Because I thought I thought I was flying a T-38. What did they put? And oh, holy shit! So I answered. Log ran off was my flight lead, and I answered because he was calling. And we had, like I said, we just lost another guy in a G-LOC accident, so we were really sensitive to it. And Log, very experienced previous F4 guy, and then Eagles, and an instructor. And he said, well, why don't we just take it back to the barn? We were nowhere close to bingo, but I was done. And then we debriefed it and all that. So yeah, it's one of those, once you learn, because there's two types of fighter pilots. When you're young and really aggressive and want to really show your stuff, how great you are, it's always, well, it'll never happen to me. Once you realize that, yes, it very easily can happen to any one of us on any given day, no matter how good you are. And you and I know people personally, people that you've met at fighter weapons school, or the 422, you know of people by name that are no longer with us. And you shake your head, well, how could it happen to him? Well, because in any given day, it can. And it's not like you live with it as a fear. You live with it knowing that it can happen, so you don't dread it, I guess. But anyway, personalities and psychiatries differ with psychologies differ with each of us. But that's the way I just knew that the only thing I could control was my two hands and piloting the airplane I was flying, and what I knew about flying well and flying safely. So that's probably really an ambiguous answer. I'm sorry I can't provide you with any more.
It's your answer. Those are the answers I'm looking for. Yeah. So tell me then a little bit about just on the theme, and then we'll move on. How does the squadron cope with the loss of a squadron member? Is there any black humor? Are there any traditions, or what traditions rather? Because there are
traditions.
But what traditions did you enact? Well,
there are some traditions that go all the way back to World War I and fighting the flying circus. It's always a shock, regardless. Even if you know it can happen, it's always a shock. In the Tigers, we had a wingman run into the flight lead during a turn, a cross turn. They were at the end of the airspace, and the flight lead elected, instead of doing an in-place turn, to point the other way, because they were kind of in a corner of a box, so to speak, of cloud banks. He elected to do a cross turn. And in a cross turn, of course, the flight lead maintains the platform, and the wingman goes above or below as he needs to maintain his energy, but don't hit the flight lead. That's the one rule: don't hit the flight lead. And he did anyway. And then we had another guy who went hypoxic in high altitude intercepts and went to sleep. So both of those were shocking because it did not involve the the intensity, the high intensity training where the adrenaline's rushing and the aggressions all out in full blower. It didn't involve the things that we normally would expect fighter pilots to get chilled from. Rather, relatively, I won't say benign, but insipid, I think might be a good word. Relatively insipid reasons, like how could that happen? It's so easy to not let it happen. So as far as how everybody handles it individually differently, and I can remember sitting on the step out of the squadron building at Bitburg of the Tigers squadron building, and we were just all because back then a lot of people smoked, so the guys were most of them that smoke wanted to go outside for a smoke, like right now. Got to have some nicotine, I guess. Not being a smoker, I have no idea, but be honest, and we were talking about what we knew at that time, which is very sketchy information. One of the guys says, "Well, I got to have a drink," and so he didn't have any further duties, and he headed for the officers' club. And it dribbles and drabs. The rest of us showed up, and of course, there's always a toast to our departed brother. If there's a formal event, or maybe even at the next formal event, there'll be a place set for that person, even though they're not there. But it gives us a chance to get to toast that person as part of the dining in, dining out arrangements. And of course, always there's a flyby ceremony with a missing man formation. It's really up to the operations officer and the squadron commander as well, of course. But the operations officer is the one that's really in touch to help the rest of us maintain our focus on the job at hand. Don't let it get you down. If you're worried about it, if it bothers you, then I will find someone for you to talk to. It may be me, because depending upon by the time an officer, a pilot gets to be an operations officer, they've seen accidents happen. They've lost good friends, and so there may be some bar talk about it in the squadron bar. So there's a healing process that follows, because it's a wound. So if you view the squadron as a living organism, which is how I tend to view it, then it's been wounded by the loss of one of its members, and that takes time to heal, and it takes positive action to heal. You don't let a wound remain open, an open sore. You don't let it get infected. You address it. Okay, this is because there are lessons in every loss, and it's somebody's responsibility. I'm putting it on the operations officer to figure out what those lessons are. What did that person dying have to teach us? To codify those on a Friday afternoon, after all the airplanes are down and we're starting to horse around a little bit, the Friday afternoon beer call is a time to get it out. Everybody's got a beer in hand. We can toast that person. This is what I got out of what happened to that person, how it occurred. So there a lot of this is informal. There's very few. I wouldn't say that there's certainly no decorum guide on how to handle a mishap within the squadron. It really is up to the leadership. And the squadron commander sets the tone, but the ops officer is the one that's in touch with what we used to call the bros, the brothers. So maybe that addresses your question.
Yeah, I think that's an enlightening answer.
Yeah.
Well, while we're on the subject, then I was going to ask you, maybe not at this point, but we're talking about it anyway. But you were the squadron commander. And you told the story of that of the 32nd TAC Fighter Squadron, and you then went on to be the vice wing at Eglin, 33rd Fighter Wing. You just talked about that too. What does it take to command a group of fighter pilots in an Eagle squadron? Then, what are the challenges of doing that successfully?
What it takes is their respect. How you get it is your job. There are a lot of Air Force officers, especially as squadron commander is the first level, but especially going into the wing command level, that they're thrown in there by their sponsor, a general officer who's supporting them in their career. And unless they're what we call a patch wearer, graduated with fighter weapons school, they arrive with no credibility. And that's the way it ought to be. You have to prove yourself. You have to prove that you can fly the F-15, speaking only of my community, that you can fly the airplane as well as anybody in this squadron. You may not be better than anybody or better than the best in the squadron, but you can fly as well as anybody. So you have to establish that. You establish that as a wingman, doing your job as a wingman, even if you're an 06, a full colonel. We hang our rank up on the coat rack, the hooks outside the door in a figurative sense, because no one, you're not going to trump anybody in debriefing by going, I'm the colonel here. So how I say it happened. That's not true. At least it wasn't true up until I left the Air Force. So you go in doing your job as a wingman, not arguing with your flight lead, contributing from your experience, maybe, but not, not debating or trying to make excuses for the errors that were made. And you build the respect that, okay, this guy's good. He's even headed. He sees the good and the bad, and he knows how to fly the airplane, knows how to use the airplane. So every leader should have the opportunity to develop that reputation or rapport, or both, actually, reputation and rapport, before they really have to start leading. There are some that don't, though. Now, they are generally the politicians that are in flight suits that are looking for their star, or looking for that plum assignment back to the Pentagon or something like that. And they're just there to get their ticket punched so they can move on. We had a commander at Schusterberg that I'll have to say none of us, we had a group commander, okay? The group commander, the 32nd Fighter Group Commander. None of us in the squadron had any respect for him. He, and not so much because of his leadership of the group. It was because he never wanted to upgrade from being a wingman. He would get his flying time, minimum flying time, by taking an airplane and going to the Ramstein for a conference. I tried to get him to upgrade at least to a 2-ship flight weight. He would not, even though he had the flagship of the base of the group. What was it, 79032? He had no tactical call sign. He had been an EC-130 pilot. He had been an EC-130 squadron commander at Simbot. Consequently, he had flown Eagles back in the day. And by that, I mean back in the early 80s when the 49th Wing at Holloman had F-15s. But because he was such a politician, he got a job as the wing commander's executive officer. And I don't know what his record was at Holloman, but obviously he did not have the confidence to become a flight leader. If you're not going to lead a flight of 2, then how can you expect to have the respect to lead the group, which has a squadron of 24 fighter pilots in it? It just doesn't happen. He wouldn't, because he had no TAC call sign. He wouldn't. I tried to talk to him. Well, sir, at least let us put boss under your name. Colonel, blah 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 blah. At least let us put boss on, so that you at least have something on the airplane that indicates, some tactical awareness or something. No, he refused. So he's probably at the low end of the spectrum of not creating enough respect to actually exert any leadership, if that makes sense.
Yeah. What happened to him then? Did he stay in the wing?
He was hoping to get a star. He was hoping to get a star, didn't, and retired.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, if you don't mind a quick aside on the subject of promotions, and especially promotions to general by fighter pilots. Okay, so I credit myself with having been a successful squadron commander at Schusterberg. The Air Force's definition of success is that you have no accidents and you don't lose anybody. In other words, people killed, swaps paint on airplanes and have a mishap. And so that's the bare bones definition of success. You got away with it. In other words, and if you actually improved the squadron and everybody had a good time, that's bonus. But that's the bottom line. Don't have any accidents. I can remember General Chambers giving me my debrief as a squadron commander. He says, Doug, when you get back to Schusterberg, we're going to give you 6 balls to juggle. And nobody can juggle more than 4. There's going to be 3 red balls and 3 blue balls. Whatever you do, don't let a red ball hit the ground. That was his analogy, if you will, of learn what's important, what's not, and keep the important things from ever going wrong. Even if the other things, even if a blue ball hits the ground, okay, fine. At least it wasn't a red ball. So that was his. So I was a successful squadron commander. We had no actions. We did well in patrolling northern Iraq, and really developed the squadron into a fighting unit from a real terrible setback as far as because they attempted to close the base early on Desert Storm and gave half of our airplanes to the Saudis.
This is Bitburg.
And they were going to close the base.
Schusterberg or Bitburg? Is this Schusterberg or Bitburg?
Well, it happened to both, but Schusterberg, Bitburg, they had 3 squadrons. They could absorb it. We were the only squadron, Schusterberg. So morale was in the shitter when I was given the squadron. So we basically came back from that, got new MISSIP A model jets. We did a great job in patrolling the skies of northern Iraq, kept Saddam Hussein's Air Force at bay, not bothering the Kurds, and protecting the UN assets going in to help the Kurds, 130s and helicopters. So we came off of that, and that was when they finally did announce the base was going to be closed. So having been a successful squadron commander, they sent me to Air War College because now I'd shown potential, and I don't mean me personally, I mean any squadron commander who does, had shown potential for further advancement. So I was on the promotion list of full colonel, and they sent me to Air War College to school me up so that I could, take a job in the Pentagon or some sort of staff, and be potentially a leader at the wing level, and commander, wing commander, vice wing commander, director of operations, or ops group commander. That's the wing level 06 jobs I'm talking about. So it's in school. Well, the military personnel center folks show up, the so-called colonels group, and they're supposed to hand massage each of our assignments if you're a full colonel. And so this brigadier general gets up there to talk about colonel assignments, how they're different than all the assignments you've ever had before in terms of selection process. And he said that they start off with really, full of himself, and he wanted us to be full of ourselves. So he starts off by saying, look around you, look to your left, look to your right. You, because you've all been promoted to colonel, or on the list to be colonels, or will have an OPR, the Officer Performance Report, that recommends you for colonel. You represent 5% of all the officers who came into the Air Force when you did. Like, oh, wow, I'm special. 5%, I'm in the top 5%. They say nothing about the fact that 75% of the people below you have left to go to the airlines. But, oh, I'm special. I'm in the top 5%. And then he said, but I'm here to tell you that out of all the colonels in the Air Force, only 5% get promoted to general officer. And I looked at the guy on my left and the guy on my right and said, well, why try? If the officer is that low, well, what's the point in trying? So because it's political, and that's the lesson there. That 5% are the politicians. So I just did my job, and even the guys who try, for instance, this group commander that I've referenced, and even my squadron commander at Bitburg, he wanted to be a general officer so badly, and an academy graduate, and he was relatively short of stature, and the other lieutenant colonels, and especially his academy classmates, referred to him as the little general, because that's what he wanted to be. He had a Napoleonic complex, right? But he was in the Air Force for 30 years, always striving to become a brigadier general, and never made it. That a lot of wasted effort, in the way I think of things. But anyway, nothing bad on him. He's a great squadron commander. Don't get me wrong, great squadron commander. Not a politician, not like the group commander I talked about. He's a great guy, tremendous. But the point is that the officers who have stars in their eyes, as we would say, wanting to be a general, who are fighter pilots, sometimes they have trouble developing the respect of the people they're supposed to be leading, because their view, their aim is not concentric with the aim of the unit, which is to fly and fight. And don't you forget it. Yeah.
What are the implications, or sorry, not the implications, what are the consequences then of that lack of trust developing, or the trust never developing rather than lack of trust developing, because you already said you start with nothing. What happens in a unit where that's the case?
The unit looks at a lower level for its leadership. They just write off the guy. He can stand up and make speeches and like, oh, okay, boss. And then they look to the squadron commander. And I have to say, the Air Force is very good in the fighter community. It was very good about selecting squadron commanders. I mean, I have to say that because they picked me. I'm just kidding. But having enough, worked for, flown with, at least a dozen squadron commanders before I actually became one. Those were guys I always respect. I respected their flight abilities. I respected their leadership talents and skills, and their vision for the unit and for the whatever type of airplane we were flying, whether it's trainers or fighters. Yeah, they were excellent. They were really good. And as I've tried to illustrate with the Air War College speech from the Colonel's group, the politicians are the ones that rise out of that crowd, if you will. It's rare that there'll be both a patch wearer and a politician. You know what I mean? The fighter weapons school graduate who really knows how to fly and fight. There's also politically adept. But anyway, so yeah, the unit will look at, well, if the squadron commander is incompetent, they'll focus in on the operations officer. If the operations officer and squadron commander are both, no loads, then they'll be each seeking their own flight commander for some sort of guidance and consistency, level playing field, meaningful training, and that sort of thing. So that's how it usually evolves.
Let's sort of turn this on its head then. You already in the first interview talked about the letter you have from General Vandenberg that says you'll never amount to anything in his Air Force, and of course you then have your retirement letter next to it. But it paints a picture of your rebellious nature and perhaps unwillingness to conform at various points. Obviously, you
rebellious, huh?
You don't think so? Am I using the wrong adjective?
Well,
how would you describe yourself?
A non-conformist, but an independent.
Independent.
I wouldn't say I actively rebelled.
Okay.
Among fighter pilots that I know and respect, there is this little known codicil to the Air Force regulations that says that it's called the rule of selective non-compliance. And if you think something's stupid, you don't have to do it.
So let me get you to tell us then about your non-conformance, and I'm thinking, what I want to get from you is some of the stories about when you were a captain, when you were young, when you were causing headaches, stuff. I don't want to say too much, but there was a deployment I think you did to Norway. Was it Norway?
That was one.
That was one. You've told me about Dechi, about some of the shenanigans that went on
Dechi was
there.
usually our playground. Steve, the reason I bring up Dechi is because it's the prelude to what happened in Norway.
Tell us about Dechi then. You take it away, Disco.
So we would come up to go down to Dechi Mimano Air Base in Sardinia. To fly on the ACMI range, the instrumented range for air-to-air flying training, against all sorts of NATO adversaries and ourselves. And since you're away from home, and it's a 4-week deployment, you break the squadron into 2 halves, and each half goes out for 2 weeks. And so we're on an Italian base. Not an American base, which gives you a sense of latitude, shall we say. We were billeted off base at first in a hotel called the Il Grillo. I had a discotheque on the ground floor and a parking lot, and we all had balconies, and we watched the locals come and go in their little bitty Fiats. And so there's several stories that come out of this. Some of them we tended to take advantage of the targets of opportunity, all the little Fiats in the parking lot, and if it looked like there was enough space between cars, between the two outside cars, then we picked the car in the middle up by the bumpers and turn it sideways to where it couldn't get out until one of the others. Or we would take a bumper if they backed in, or if it was the front end. If we would lift the bumper over the concrete ledge to where the wheels, the drive wheels, were off the ground. So the people would get in them and start them up, and then and not go anywhere. And we would all be up on the balcony laughing our asses off as these guys are coming out of the disco, most of them drunk or half drunk and doing that. The El Grillo, one of the reasons we were built to there was it actually had an air conditioning system. And there was one of the guys in the squadron whose call sign was Mouse. He was a man of small stature, and even his facial expressions anyway kind of resembled his call sign, and he could fit into the ducting, the air conditioner ducting at the hotel. So we pushed Mouse up into the ducting, and he would crawl down the ducting like a rat or a mouse. And the way the grills were, so to speak, the vent covers they weren't screwed in, and if they were, it was just plaster, and you could just push it out. And so Mouse would this is all captains and lieutenants, right? And so typically we did this toward the flight commanders and majors and lieutenant colonels. And so what Mouse would do is he'd remove the vent cover and then drop himself down. I think he'd been a gymnast in college. So yeah, very agile, lightweight, able to squeeze into small places and get out and stuff. And so what he would do was he'd get into the guy's room, and you got to remember that the flight commanders and majors and above, they had single rooms. They didn't have to room with anybody by virtue of their rank. All the captains had to room in pairs. So he would unlock the door, and then the rest of us would come swooping in, and we would do what we would wall the guy, and which is to rush up to the bed, lift the mattress, and slam him against the wall, and then run out. And that, of course, would awaken them suddenly, shockingly. Well, we did that in Bodo, Norway. We were up there on a real world deployment, and we walled a friend of mine. I'm still close to. He's retired up in Colorado Springs. His call sign is Dirt, as in dumbass. Dumb as dirt. So Dirt and I managed to sneak into it. I don't remember how we got in, but we walled our flight commander. And our flight commander, he had been an athlete in college, and man, he came lightning after us. He hit the ground running, and as soon as Dirt and I exited the door, we split. Each taking a different route down the hall, and the flight commander came racing out of the door, and because he was leaning over in the turn, he slammed his foot against the door facing, so much so that it ripped the toenail off of two of the toes on the left foot, and of course, he tended not to overdress for sleeping, if you catch my meaning. So he comes racing out of the room and then winds up hobbling down the hall, butt ass naked, with blood, leaving a blood trail behind him. And he was mightily pissed, and we were in trouble. There was no doubt. I mean, we were both in trouble. But those sorts of antics are. We generally write them off as, letting off some steam, from the intensity of the flying environment. There's a residual adrenaline left or whatever.